hello. Good evening, welcome to the show. A varied range of topics this evening. Glad you could join us as ever. The Women's World Cup takes the principal focus this evening, parallel with the outstanding success in their first season in the FA Women's Championship of Sheffield United ladies team. And I'm delighted to say that Carla Ward, the manager, joins us this evening, rejoins us this evening, I think a third visit. Nice to see you, Carla, and congratulations on the season that you've had. It's been tremendous. We'll go into some detail on that and talk more specifically about the Women's World Cup by a guy that's going to be very closely involved in it as a TV producer at the England camp in France, and that's Lance Hardy, working for the BBC, I think, Lance, in the tournament for a month, which is quite pleasant work. If you
hopefully they'll get to the final.
Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah. We're going to field opinions on that, but I'd like to start with Sheffield. Oh, by the way, VAR as well. I was almost late for my own show today. Been down to Stockley Park, the VAR headquarters down near Heathrow Airport. It could be like an air traffic control centre. It really could. And a fascinating look. I was there with the TalkSport team, all the reporters there having a tutorial. And of course, Lance, you'll be closely entangled, can I say, with VAR at the tournament in France, having worked with it before. So that'll be another topic that we will have. 7 successive wins to finish the season. That is fantastic and very well done, finishing 5th in the table. Does that exceed your hopes? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we needed the 7 wins after the start we had, that's for sure. But you know, we set out at the start of the season with what we wanted to do. We never swayed from that, and even when we were losing games, there was talk: do we change, what we're doing? But we stuck to what we wanted to do and what we believe in, and it was always going to come. I think we've got an experienced group and a talented group, so there was never any doubt that it would come. It was just a case of firstly keeping them fixed. Obviously, we got hit with a few big injuries at the start of the season. But come Christmas, the turn of the year, they've been absolutely magnificent. So, yeah, it's pleasing. Going back to the start of that process, you had a very busy summer, didn't you? Because you were virtually assembling a squad from scratch. Yeah, and I don't think, we've spoken a lot in these last couple of weeks about the season, and I think people forget that a year ago we had to recruit 20 new players and a new staffing group. So, yeah, it was tough, and you never know how it's going to pan out because you're putting 20 individuals together that have not played together. So, having said that, the girls have been brilliant. I think there's been a lot of things in our way this year with injuries and other things that have obviously been influenced on and off the pitch. But it's a credit to the girls, they've dug deep, they've stuck to what we want, and they've not rolled over, because I said to them only a couple of days ago, some groups might have rolled over when we started going through a bad period, but these girls didn't, and I think it's a credit to them. And I think that actually, instead of just talking about since Christmas, they deserve a lot of credit for the first half of the season, because, the mental toughness that they showed was superb, and actually it's got them in good stead to finish the season the way we did. You look at the name of Sheffield United, it's a big name. I mean, even more so now, Premier League. Yeah. You should be disappointed you haven't been promoted to the Women's League. I jest. Lance, you follow the women's game fairly closely, you have to. How impressed have you been with, the name Sheffield United coming up in the way that they have? Yes, it's been interesting to observe. We were talking about it before we came on air. A lot's made of the WSL on a national level, but now that the women's system's now got a very, very successful pyramid in place, and the championship's obviously key to that. And it will be interesting how the teams that have been promoted, Manchester United and Tottenham, fare in the WSL next season. It'll be interesting how Sheffield United fare without Manchester United and Tottenham next season. Yes, and you're unsure. I mean, how many? This again was a question we raised. How many promotion places there are going to be? Yeah, I think it'll be 1. I think they probably went with 2 last year, to knowing full well what could have been the outcome, should I say. So yeah, I think it will be 1, but that's not been confirmed yet. So hopefully that will be in the next coming weeks. We'll find out that. There's 2 divisions of 12 now, isn't there?
going forward.
Yeah, minus any hiccups that may occur in the next couple of weeks with obviously any teams that are struggling with the funding side of it, which happens, and it's happened year in, year out. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that won't happen, but it's possible.
One point of interest is the structure of it, and I'm sure that this varies from club to club, where there's an established men's team and there's a women's team alongside, although it may not be run alongside most of the others. At Sheffield United, the integration seems to be particularly tight. How does that work between the two?
Yeah, you know what, it's I've been in the women's game obviously a long time now, and I've been at clubs both here and abroad, and I've never ever been at a club that's more integrated from top to bottom. You know, I was saying before that every department looks after the men and the women, and then the academy. It really is truly integrated, and it's unbelievable. And to be honest with you, that's where, when it comes around to recruitment, like Chris, we don't have the biggest budget in the world, and rightly so, because I think that if you do go a bit wild, then that's when it becomes unsustainable and a bit volatile. So, you know, thankfully, we've got the facilities, we've got the model, we've got everything to go with it. So when it comes around to now, we're recruiting currently for next season. It's all about what we can offer them as an individual, coming and being an elite athlete, and then money becomes secondary. Everybody knows that, you know, people talk about this one club ethos in the women's game, and they might have a photo shoot and it's a hashtag one club. We truly are one club, and that's the difference. And I don't think anybody in the club will tell you different. You know, we've got our award tonight this weekend. There's over 200 people coming, and a lot of that is the club. So that'll tell you a story in itself. You know, everybody's behind it, everybody backs it. So it's a great place to be, magnificent place to be. And
so it's not a separate entity then? You're not talking, you're almost sharing, you're not quite sharing facilities, but you're just across the corridor.
Yeah, we are sharing facilities. Yeah,
you are sharing facilities.
Well, you know, we train at the academy.
Yeah.
We physio there, gym there, we eat there. My office is based in the same corridor as obviously the lads. So, yeah, you know, we're part of the club. We're not just the women. We are part of the club. So that for me is huge, and actually a big tool when you're actually trying to recruit players.
And you're working to the same department heads,
yes,
effectively.
Yeah, so myself and Chris will report directly to the director of football. I probably bug him a little bit more than Chris does, but yeah, we both report to the same person. And
Stephen Bettis was chief executive.
Yeah, and Stephen Bettis, we've got to go to before Stephen Bettis, as Chris does. So, but yeah, essentially we both go to the same people.
And how much does it, Rob, I'll come to you in a minute, Lance, on your task in France this summer, but you know, the infectious nature of a team succeeding in such a way as Chris Wilder's has this year. How much does that rub off on you, and do you feel that's sort of had a positive effect on the results you've had?
100%. You know what? When the club are doing what they're doing, and Chris has brought some unbelievable football to the club, and he's really installed a winning mentality into everybody. You don't want to. You definitely don't want to go out there celebrating if you're not sort of doing your bit for the club. So, whilst the men are delivering, and they're you know, Chris is installing this into the, you know, from top to bottom of the club, you've got to do your part, and it does bring a little bit of pressure. But listen, we like pressure as managers. We like pressure, and I think that on a whole, if you see them having success, you want success yourself. And I was talking to James Shield this morning from the Star, and he said that he's spoken to a couple of players, and they said the same thing. It was one of those, I want a little bit of this. So it's no different for us, you know. We want to make sure we're successful and be part of it, because essentially we want Sheffield United to be successful, whether that's the men, the women, the academy. It all rubs off. You've been able to enjoy your achievements more. Well, the men's achievements more because you feel that you've also achieved. Yeah, I've also got I've also got a 2-week hangover, but no, it's nothing on what the managers of Sheffield United. It goes with the job. Yes, yeah, they're required. It's in the contract, surely. Yeah, listen, I'm not going to complain. It's been a lot of fun, but no, listen, we want to be successful too. I did speak to Chris and congratulated him the other day, and I asked him if he'd recovered from his week-long ordeal, and he said, well, to be fair, he says, I did have to dig in. He said, he really does know how to play hard as well as
Oh, work as well as work hard, doesn't he?
But I can guarantee
he's world class at both, actually.
But I can guarantee he makes them work harder than they've ever worked before they play hard. So, yeah. But I think that's where the boys will respect it more, because they know, you know, one of the players says to me, because we get on with the players quite well, a couple of players say to me, I've never ever been worked the way that we're worked here. And I said, brilliant. But then they'll enjoy themselves once they've earned success. It's
nice that you've been party to that celebration as well.
Yeah.
You know, let your hair down with them, and
we actually cancelled a pre-season friendly the night the 5th, so we could go and join the promotion party with them, which was quite nice. So, yeah, it was a good night.
And you were at the League Managers Association Awards as well, weren't you?
Yep.
Earlier this week.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Where Chris got the ultimate accolade, the manager of the season. It's, you know, it's pretty rare.
Well deserved.
And absolutely.
Phenomenal achievement.
Yeah, I mean, even just as significant for me, he won the championship award despite finishing second behind Norwich. You know, nobody's belittling Norwich's achievement, but it's quite refreshing sometimes with awards to see people looking beyond the title winners. In fact, in all the other divisions, the winners of the title collected the awards, apart from the championship. Acknowledgement there. I don't know if television producers are allowed to sort of, you're not going to bet on it, but who are your favourites from the research you've done for the Women's World Cup then? Who do you fancy for it?
Well, this is one thing we didn't discuss before we came on.
It'll be interesting, this.
I'll tell you what, I'll buy you some time. I'll ask you again in part 2.
I would say France and the USA.
Yeah.
The interesting part of that is that both those countries would be expected to win their group, and then they would play each other in the quarter-final in Paris. This is the best chance that England have had. I've covered women's football since 2001. It's the best chance we've had, maybe the best chance that we have. If we win our group, we go in the top half of the draw with France and the USA as well. If we come second in our group, the route to the final is a lot easier, apart from in the last 16 we would play either Canada or the Netherlands, which would probably be the hardest game on the way to Lyon in the final. I would think that England are one of the three. Obviously, the success in the She Believes Cup. They've been growing last few years. The Mark Sampson era brought major improvements to the team. Obviously, they reached the semi-final of the World Cup, the semi-final of the Euros, and Phil Neville's built on that. And it's really interesting hearing Carly talk about Sheffield United, the integration of the men's and the women's, because obviously Manchester City are a very successful model of that as well. But England are a really successful model of that. You know, St George's and what's happened with not just the men's senior team, but the under-20s and the under-17s, and the women's team as well. And I was at the Football Writers' Dinner last week. Nikita Paris got the Women's Player of the Year. And the first thing she said in her speech was that hopefully it'd be a great summer for English football, for the Lionesses, but also for the men and the Nations League. And there just seems to be this whole collectivity about England, and it's the best spirit I've ever seen in 20 years or so. And as I said, I think this is the best chance we've had by far.
Do you agree with that, Carla?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what he's done is a majority anyway are playing and they're performing for their club. So, yeah, I think we've got a good chance. I think never rule out Japan. I mean, people talk about the She Believes Cup, but if you look at Japan in that, probably only 3 or 4 of them will go. What they did there was utilise all the youngsters, and they had an awful lot of debuts at that She Believes Cup. So I think that I can see them up there, and I can see them, you know, they're in our group as well. So, by the way, when you say that it's an easier route coming second, that might well happen.
You get the feeling that this is a watershed summer for women's football, that there's a dam about to burst of interest and enthusiasm in this country, which
and I was going to
can be broken
extend
down
that and say that it's also a big opportunity for Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Scotland would fancy themselves to at least finish in the top 3 in that group, and the tournament is 24 teams, so 4 third-place teams get through to the last 16 as well, and they're coming into the tournament with quite a lot of confidence, you know.
But your role, you're with England.
I am, yes.
You're the producer at the England camps. So broadly, what does that involve? Supervising pre-match
Looking after looking after all the media for the BBC.
Yeah.
So player one-on-one interviews, manager interviews, pre-match, post-match, camp reports. It's pretty full-on in terms of what we're producing now because the interest is so high. Obviously, the TV coverage speaks for itself, but there's radio, news, online, social media. It's as busy as it's ever been. I've done the camp a few times. I did the camp for the GB team in the Olympics as well in London. And not only do I think this is the best chance England have had of winning the tournament, I also think this is the biggest tournament that there has been, both internationally and certainly nationally. Yeah.
Standout players for England? Who's going to really grab the headlines, do you feel?
I'm not saying this because she's ex-Sheffield United, but Millie Bright, I think how can I put this? I think she dominates games. I think she's by far our best player. I don't think she quite gets the recognition she deserves at all. You know, you watch her and she plays like a... How do I put this without sounding politically incorrect?
I've no idea what you're about to say.
She's a true athlete that I genuinely believe she is our best player. I think you can play her anywhere. I think she dictates games. She controls games. So for me, Millie Bright is one that really will, hopefully, dictate a lot of the World Cup. Okay,
and Phil Neville, you'll have a lot of dealings with, you know, from the career he's had and from the fact that he's done media work. You know, I would imagine that, I don't know him like you do, but I imagine he'd be good to work with from that point of view.
Yeah, and I also think that regarding the women's game, you know, whether it's at club level or national level, I think that anybody or everybody who's involved sees the importance of the media as well, because this is a growing sport, and
more so than with the men's, which is going to get the coverage anyway. Yeah.
So I think there's a buy-in now on both sides, but also hopefully this will be a good news story, and the last few years there've been plenty of good news stories with England. So to that end, a media relationship, as you know yourself, is always going to be a lot easier on both sides.
Yeah, it sounds like you're going to have an excellent summer. We all look forward to that. Worksop Town is also very close to your heart.
Yes, it is, yes.
We're actually going to show one of the goals that Worksop scored in the Northern Counties East League Cup final, which was played on Monday night at the Keepmoat Stadium, Doncaster. The first goal was very special from a free kick. You're really slouches in this. 22 successive wins. 22 successive wins. The team.
I know. Craig Denton.
You're only on 7.
It's fine. I know. Craig actually messaged me after we won those 7. I said, "You're not doing too bad yourself, are you?" And he said, "Yeah, just the unbeaten streak." So, no, he's not here tonight.
Craig, no, he was here last week.
I was going to say he's here every other week.
Yeah, he's done his bit. He's done his bit for the season. It's really fantastic. But in your sequence of 7, I mean, you finished with a 6-0 victory over Millwall Lionesses in front of over 1,000, which, you know, it's all relative. That's a very good gate. That was at Bramall Lane, wasn't it?
Yes,
It was over 1,000. And in that 7, magnificent 7, you beat Spurs.
We did, yeah.
By 2-1.
Yes, it was. We were outstanding. You know, the girls were absolutely brilliant, and we had a few away that day, which was interesting. So we had backs against the wall before we went into the game, and it was interesting because even though we had some big players missing, there was something inside me that thought these girls are going to pull together. The way they've been since Christmas, there was just no doubt in me. And then we went 1-0 down, and even then I still believed that we could go and get something. So we went 1-0 down and took a couple of defenders off and put a couple of forwards on and went for it. And
substitutions.
And we went for it, and literally just Jade Pennock's come up with another late winner like she does.
What a player.
been brilliant.
I saw your victory over Aston Villa earlier this season. I thought she was absolutely outstanding. I don't know if I've got that right or wrong.
Do you know what? It's quite funny because we got her
Tell
in.
you what is funny, we'll pick up this 8 seconds, 7 seconds to the break. More of this. James Gregg will round up all the sporting scene. More from Carla and from Mark in 5. See you then.